the home of the do-it-yourself trucker. When everything goes wrong, you gotta Redneckanize.
Well, hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Hey, this is Redneckanize Radio, and this is Ed with Redneckanize. You can call it at 516-387-1733. Just listen along or be part of the conversation. Just hit one. Just don't forget to check us out at redneckanize.com. You can also check us YouTube channel. Yeah, check out our YouTube channel. That was the thing. Please subscribe and don't forget to like and share all those great videos. You know, we got those videos out there. They're directed at like talking to the four-wheelers about driving around big trucks. You know, space management, turning, lane changing, and stuff like exiting and entering the highway, things like that. So all that great stuff out there that we think would be trying to make the driving easier, a better world, brotherhood of trucking, all that great stuff like that. And like I said, if you got any issues, you can always give us a holler. We got a place you can contact us on our website, and we appreciate all the support out there. Like I said, we've got great sponsors, DPF Regeneration and Trucker Tools app. We also have another great sponsor, and that's Load to Ride Transportation. They are a great little outfit out of Denver, Colorado. And like I said, you can check them out at ltrtransportation.com. It's LTR, Load to Ride Transportation. They got cool trucks, they got a cool logo, and they've got great just a whole great network and outfit of trailers and different types of things. They get involved in all that stuff like warehousing and expedited and hazmat certification, all that good stuff like that. And I mean, it's one of those where shippers can call them to get everything done. It's like we're a one-stop shop. A shipper can call them and pretty much set up an account to where they can pretty much get anything they want, whether it be a small shipment of stuff or truckload stuff, whether it be anything they need as far as hazmat and all that. And it's a cool little network. You can give them a call over there at 720-277-0030. Like I said, check them out at ltrtransportation.com, and we appreciate those guys out there. So we're diving into a bunch of other things going on, and there was of course, everybody's talking about driver shortage. As truck drivers, we know we've been hearing about this for years. And that's because these bigger carriers, what they want is they want to be able to keep paying drivers at a low rate. So they rely on the schools to keep training truck drivers, or to keep training new drivers, where people that are trying to just, either better their lives or get into a new career, and they don't really know the aspects of the job. And there's not really any hard regulation except for you got to have a CDL, and it's really not that hard to get, especially if you go through a truck driving school, which they'll pick up all the extra costs, and they'll even give you like a student loan, or you can even get a grant or some kind of money to pay for it. Even the carriers will pay for your schooling as long as you go work for them for 6 months or a year. So it's really not that hard. Well, these big companies, what they want is they want to keep the wages low by keep bringing in new drivers. Now that's part of it. Okay. The other part is that as a person gets into the trucking industry, they make mistakes. Okay, new people in any job make mistakes. We all know that. Okay, that's why it's hard to be a full-time doctor straight out of medical school. You got to do all the different stuff like residency and all that, and you're not going to be able to just do whatever you want as a doctor, straight out of medical school. You have to put in the training. So in relation to that, there's not really that aspect. According to the federal government, as soon as you get out of truck driving school, you're good to go. You're going to have your CDL, and that CDL means you can do anything you want without restrictions. So what happens is that they throw you to the wolves, and you just do all you need to do, and you get out there and you make mistakes. Now, depending on the severity of these mistakes, it goes on your record and it follows you. And what's going to happen is that if let's say that you aren't very good at backing, and you don't really have anybody to show you, and you don't practice enough, and you constantly have backing accidents, well, you have enough accidents in a period of time, those carriers, they're just going to get rid of you. They don't even want to mess with you. They just say, you know what, you have too many accidents. We have to let you go. So that's what they do. And so then you try to go to another carrier. Well, they might give you a shot, but again, if you don't get better at what you were messing up, then that carrier is going to get rid of you. So then when you go to the next carrier, they're like, wait a minute, now you've got two carriers here so that carrier might not even give you a shot because you haven't proven yourself. So that person that made those mistakes and didn't have any kind of quality training, and they kept making those mistakes and they didn't really get better at it, that person is no longer a truck driver. You're not going to be able to get a job as truck driving. You're going to have to go either work for somebody that doesn't care, which is getting lower and lower because of insurance restrictions, or you're going to have to either do it illegally, which is even worse, or just get out of the business altogether. And so that's, to me, from my point of view, that's what I see. I see people getting bridges burnt, either truck drivers out there with CDL holders. They're either burning the bridges themselves, which means you go to work for a carrier and you don't like them, so you quit, like you leave the truck somewhere where they got to go get it, or you just don't show up, and don't tell them that you're leaving and all that, and you create these problems. And then of course you go to one carrier, you don't like them, you quit, you leave. You go to the next carrier, you don't quite like them, you quit, you leave. You go to another carrier, you don't like them, you quit, you leave. Next thing you know, that's all built up. It's going to catch up with you. You go to another carrier and they're like, wait a minute, you left all these carriers, did you tell them why? And you're like, oh yeah, I told them. And then they call and they say, no, he just didn't show up. Well, that's going to catch up with you. So then that person not going to be able to truck drive anymore. They're not going to do it unless they go buy their own truck and start their own carrier, and that's few and far between. So there's a lot of issues that create a driver shortage because new drivers come in and then they get weeded out. And I'm talking like, I would say, the numbers suggest it's only like 30%, but I tell you, it's like 60%. Like 60% of the people that come into truck driving school don't make it past 3 years. That's to me. I have no scientific proof to back that up, but I'll tell you that's just the way I see it. Because we see when you got there and you start talking to drivers and you start looking at who's driving and who's not driving, you see that it's hard. It's a hard life because you're out there on the road by yourself. These carriers that have local jobs or they have special jobs where you're going to get paid good money to do less work, they want experienced drivers. They want drivers that have 3, 5, 10 years experience. Straight out of school, you're not going to get those jobs. We used to get that all the time. I worked for a big carrier in the office, and those guys would come in straight off. They would come to work, go out with a trainer for a month or two. They come back in. Now they've just got off the trainer's truck. They still don't know, as much as they need to know. They just know enough to get by. And like I said, even they're still going to make mistakes. But they come in, they sit down and say, hey, I want a local job. It's local. Well, we have local here. Where do you live? Oh, I live out in the middle of West Texas somewhere. Well, there's no local out there. Ain't gonna happen at all. You're gonna have to move. If you want local, you're gonna have to move to a big city. Oh, I ain't gonna do that. I got property out there. Well, then what are you crying about? That person's probably gonna filter out because they don't want to be gone from home. So they're gonna have to find a job or move to a place where they can get home more. And that's what I would think that truck drivers probably are more willing to move than most people. But a lot of people, they don't get into truck driving because they might have to be willing to move or be willing to be gone from home. And there's not a lot of people willing to do that. I see people all the time in these dead-end jobs where they're digging ditches or flipping burgers. And I said, dude, you can make better money if you just go become a truck driver. Oh, then I'd be gone for a week or a month or two, and I don't want to do that. Okay, more power to you. What do you want? So we dive into those things. There's a lot of issues that come about like that. But this company here, they talked about how it's mostly to do with the COVID restrictions that shut down the schools. And then the other big things, it says here, so it's a recruiting firm out of Burbank, California. And they say they specialize in finding truck drivers, and it's on the front lines of the national talent shortage. It says, so when the major drugstore chain that needed drivers in a remote region of the upper Midwest reached out for help, Centerline got creative. Because in this person here, they say, Shane Keller, Centerline's managing director of recruitment, says, our team looked around and found that we had drivers available locally and came up with the idea to fly them out there, put them up, and have them do the work until the job was done. He said the drivers were dedicated to that company and for 6 weeks moved the products the company needed to move. Because the firm's mobile driver solution program was born and quickly became a pool of more than 200 drivers who are willing to travel wherever companies need them. Well, that's not a lot of drivers, 200. So Centerline Drivers is far from alone in its struggle to recruit new truckers. The industry is experiencing a severe shortage, which is expected to grow even worse over the next decade. According to the latest data from the American Trucking Association, the industry was short 60,800 drivers as of late 2018. Left unchecked, that shortage could swell to more than 160,000 drivers nationally by 2028, said Bob Castile, the ATA's chief economist. In a more recent survey, Centerline drivers found that more than 50% of the employees were having trouble hiring truckers. 50% of the employers. So real quick about this, I wanted to say ATA, it's an organization created and funded and pretty much controlled by all those big carriers. Okay, the average owner operator or the average truck driver does not get like they're not helped by ATA. ATA is not something that will help you as just a regular truck driver. They're there just to keep the trucking industry, how it ballooned up after they deregulated to these large carriers, and that's what ATA is just pretty much grown into. So it continues on here. It says, for many, this means they have trucks sit for days, which increases costs and quickly impacts a company's bottom line, Keller said. The cost of having a truck sit empty is high. Our customers estimated that cost of sitting a truck is $500 to $1,500 per day per truck. That's a huge number. So the reasons of the driver shortage are varied, but age restrictions and schooling issues top the list, said Castillo, who explained that the federal law prevents drivers who are younger than 21 from hauling freight across state lines, even though 49 states. Now, see, I hate it when an economist, this guy is still called an economist, okay, that works for the ATA. He says it's because of the age restrictions. And of course, he spells all this out, how the age restriction. Now, I don't like age restriction. I know a lot of drivers do like age restriction. I think it's kind of silly that a state will let a truck driver drive in the state that's they're 18 to 19 years old and they can drive in the state, but they can't cross state lines. That's silly. Okay. So to me, the federal government probably shouldn't have an age restriction. If the state says it's okay and the other state that they're going into says it's okay, then what's the big deal? Okay. And that's kind of where we need to kind of get the federal government out of it and let the states handle it, because it seems to me, because I mean, if you look at, well, it's 49 states. So what one state doesn't allow it, you would think that the accidents would be through the roof. Like you would, if all this was true, that 21 was the age instead of 18, 19, 20, that means that every time there was an accident, it would be more likely be the person that was under 21, which is not the case. That's not the case. So the age restriction is silly. However, I don't think it's that huge of a number to affect the driver shortage. It hurts their recruiting, because if they want to hire an over-the-road truck driver, they can't hire anyone that's under the age of 21, because that person that's under the age, if you're like Schneider or Swift or anybody, you can hire 18, 19, 20-year-olds. They just can't leave the state. So like in the state of Texas or Wisconsin or just, pretty much any state, you can make good money staying in the state. You don't have to cross state lines in order to not get miles. It's not going to be very fun because you're going to do a lot of short hauls. In Texas, maybe not. I mean, you're talking about taking a trip from San Antonio to El Paso. That's a good run. Even Dallas to Laredo and back is a good run. I mean, you're talking about 600 miles between Laredo and Dallas. So that's a good day trip. It sucks because it's 35, but it's a good trip, good miles. So those carriers could hire, I mean, they get creative with everything else. Why not create a shuttle system where all your drivers that are driving from like Houston, like say you got a load going from Houston to Denver, and you put it on some shuttle trucks or something, the drivers that stay in Texas can be under 21. That's simple, but apparently they don't do that. And to me, it's insurance because of what I just talked about. If you start out, and you keep making mistakes, next thing you know, you're not going to get hired. And that kind of stuff is what's restrictive, I think. I think that's more to do with it, but they don't ever talk about that. They don't talk about how the lack of training and the lack of training standards makes it hard for a driver that's new to become better, so that they don't get into that rut to where they're going to have to be forced out. If you take control, I mean, a lot of people were born to do this job and a lot of people weren't. And a lot of people can be trained, but it's hard. It's a hard life and it's a hard job, especially when you're learning. And that kind of thing. I think it's a big deal. So then it says this means drivers typically don't start in the industry until they're older. The average new truck driver student is well into their 30s, meaning they are on their second, third, or even fourth career path, Castillo said. It says there is legislation that would, with additional training and safety technology, and see, and the Economist spells out the legislation, which the Economist shouldn't be talking about politics. The Economist should just spell out, okay, the reasons why, this is why. Don't try to get political, okay? It says another obstacle is the requirement for drivers to pass pre-employment and random drug screenings. And this is another issue. Now, this here I didn't know about, so here, let's read on this here. It says, at the start of 2020, the federal government created a national database of drivers who failed drug tests, which has had a significant impact on drivers. While Castillo said the ATA pushed for this requirement and fully supports it, the policy has impacted a number of drivers. Since the clearinghouse was open, more than 70,000 drivers have been deemed ineligible, but just 12,000 have completed the process to return to duty, he said. That's 58,000 drivers who normally could be on the road but aren't because they failed drug tests. So I guess if you failed a drug test in the past, you go through a program, and it's kind of like one of those deals where you go to counseling or you go to a doctor and they find out why and all that. I mean, a lot of times the drivers fail drug tests because they're on some kind of medication, and the medication causes them to test positive, and all you need to do is just go to the doctor, but a lot of them don't. Because they went to one doctor to get the medication, and then they quit going to the doctor. And as truck drivers, we know it's hard to get a regular doctor and all that stuff. But if you would take the effort to get that cleared up, then it would be where you could drive again. So that's a big deal, and it is. I mean, what happened was when they legalized pot, a lot of people thought that because it was legal, they could do it even though they were truck drivers. And the federal government says you cannot be, as a CDL holder, you cannot test positive for drugs at all. And a lot of companies do the hair test, which goes back even further, which it's hard to get that out of your system. And it says the COVID-19 pandemic made matters even worse. The public health crisis limited truck opportunities to experienced drivers as most schools closed since they were unable to teach truck driving via Zoom. Castillo said about 40% fewer drivers were trained in 2020 than in 2019, which likely represents tens of thousands of drivers who could not enter the industry. The good news is, as things return to normal, the issue should slowly resolve itself. So the school's closing. I understand that, but like I said, the carriers push for those schools. The schools, in my opinion, like I said, I don't have any scientific data to back it up, but the schools, they lose probably more drivers than, the driver doesn't stay. It's one of those revolving door things. See, the door stopped revolving. So you lost drivers because as you bring in new drivers, you bring in 10 drivers, you're going to lose 4, 5, 6 drivers in that span of time frame, in my opinion, between the first 3 years. So that's what happened. And of course, you lose more and more because they retire and everything. So that kind of stuff. And it says, Keller pointed out that due to the surge in e-commerce last year, there is an even higher, larger demand for professional truck drivers to move products. Hence, drivers can call their own shots. And this is another thing is what I see carriers increasing their pay packages, increasing rates for their company. I don't see a lot of rates that are being I haven't talked to specifically any owner operators that have really said that the rates have shot up. I don't think they have. And but I was talking to an expedited driver, and the reason why the rates don't shoot up that high is because the bigger carriers, again, they have the capacity and the people on the phones or on the internet, and they book this freight. They book the freight. They book the freight. Book the freight. They just a carrier will call, or a shipper will call the carrier, a bigger carrier, and say, hey, I got 20 loads a day to get out. I need somebody that can pick up 20 loads a day and get it delivered. And those carriers, because they have trailers and they have trucks, and they'll take that freight. They'll say, I'll take those 20 loads. Take Schneider. Let's use Schneider as an example, because Schneider, we know, just like JB Hunt, they have not only their own company, but they've got a logistics company where they can farm out. They book freight on a load board. They put the freight on the load boards, and they contract it off. They'll hire either an owner-operator that only works for Schneider, or they hire Schneider-approved independent companies, or they just put it on a load board and say, whoever can take it. And even brokers will take that load. And they don't even have a truck, but they'll take that load and they'll go find a truck. And they book it, and they get it, and they do whatever they can. Well, what happens is that certain loads got to be delivered to spots in certain places. Well, they book that freight and they get it loaded, and they can't haul it, and it gets to the brink to where they can't. It's got to be picked up by this time, and they don't have any trucks to go get it. So next thing you know, they have to start raising the rate. They have to get somebody to bite on it, and they eventually go up. And the expedited driver was telling me that his dispatcher, they sit and they wait and they wait and they wait, because they know that it's going to come down the line where they're going to have to pay. They're going to have to pay a lot of money to get that load moved, because they booked it at a certain rate, and they signed a contract where they've got to haul it for that rate. And so they're going to have to pay more money out of their own pocket to get that load covered. If they can't, then they lose the contract. So these companies, if you're out there calling customers as an independent, no, they're not booking the freight for high dollar amounts, because they know that those carriers will book it for a low dollar amount. It's when that you start getting in the spot market where they don't have a carrier that they can guarantee that'll pick it up. Then the rate has to go up. And a lot of people out there, a lot of independents, they know this. So if you're one of those owner operators that gets out there and works off load boards, or is itchy about I want to make sure I have a load to pick up by tomorrow morning, instead of waiting a little bit more. So it's one of those things where it's a chicken and the egg. You got who's going to bite first? If you're gonna wait, or you're going to wait and get the high dollar amount, or you're not going to wait and you're going to be willing to take less money just so you got load. And I say to each his own, whatever you want to do. But a lot of people out there are making really good money because these carriers are booking this freight and they can't cover it, and they got to pay extra to get it moved. And that's a lot of things that go on down to. It says how companies are attracting truckers. It says to combat the shortage, trucking companies or recruiters are trying a range of tactics, including increasing pay and sign-on bonuses. And see, that's what we talked about, all that kind of stuff like that. And I think we're going to keep talking about this. I think that we're going to take a little break, and we're going to come back. We're going to keep talking about it. We've done a pretty good job here, and we want to make sure everybody's following along. 71733. If you've got any
Any questions or concerns, give us a holler. Be sure to check out our website, redneckanize.com. This is Redneckanize Radio, and we hope everybody's having a great evening out there. Like I said, keep it safe and successful out there, and we'll be right back.
Never seen you, but that's what I do. I go anywhere you want me to, into the wild blue.